Thanks for joining me again as we look back at another great classic film. This is a multi-award winning musical which set a new benchmark for what the genre could deliver. It is adapted from a highly successful stage musical, as well as an important Charles Dickens text. It was led by a legendary British director, making just his second musical and working with a cast made up of child actors as well as seasoned professionals. It is Oliver from 1968. In 1964, Bryan Forbes was chosen to direct the film adaptation, but was replaced by Lewis Gilbert, who later withdrew during pre-production. Carol Reed was a surprising choice to direct, being known for serious and atmospheric black and white dramas like The Third Man and Odd Man Out, as well as large-budget Hollywood epics like The Agony and the Ecstasy. He hadn't directed a musical since the Ealing musical comedy Penny Paradise 30 years earlier. It was Lewis Gilbert who had engaged Vernice Harris to adapt the screenplay from Lionel Bart's 1960 stage musical, which itself had been adapted from Charles Dickens' 1838 novel Oliver Twist. Bart had sold the rights to British entertainer Max Bygraves for £350, who once sold them for £250,000. Oliver also had a successful run on Broadway, opening in January of '63, running for 774 performances and earning a Tony Award nomination in that year. The stage production and the film are especially notable for well-known musical numbers Food, Glorious Food, Consider Yourself, I'd Do Anything, and You've Got to Pick a Pocket or Two. Comedian Jim Davidson auditioned for The Artful Dodger, but the role went to Jack Wilde, who had played one of Fagin's boys in the London production, but was now old enough to play the Dodger. Richard Burton was considered for the role of Bill Sykes, but it went to director Carol Reed's nephew Oliver Reed, who had just begun to make a name for himself. This wasn't a case of nepotism, with Oliver having to audition and screen test for the part, and having to further persuade his uncle that he was right for the role. Carol Reed had wanted Shirley Bassey for the role of Nancy, but was rejected by studio bosses, who felt that the public was not ready for a black Nancy. Julie Andrews and Elizabeth Taylor were also reportedly considered for the role, with many feeling it should have gone to Georgia Brown, who had played Nancy on the stage. It finally went to then unknown Shani Wallace, who was offered the role nearly a year after first auditioning, after demonstrating to the producers that she could pull off an acceptable Cockney accent. Lawrence Harvey, Peter O'Toole, Bruce Forsyth, Dick Van Dyke and Peter Sellers were all considered for the role of Fagin, but it went to Ron Moody, who was asked to reprise his stage role. Moody, who was Jewish, toned down the unpleasant traits of the Dickens character, playing him more as a clown, inspired by popular British comedian and magician Tommy Cooper. Moody also toned down the East London Yiddish accent for greater authenticity and to avoid accusations of anti-Semitism. Hugh Griffith, who had won an Oscar for his role in Ben-Hur, played the magistrate, and British comedian Harry Seacombe played Mr. Bumble, despite being mostly unknown outside the UK. About 5,000 boys auditioned for the role of Oliver before Mark Lester was cast. The cast also included 84 boys between the ages of 8 and 15, who the filmmakers found rowdy and often difficult to handle. The cast rehearsed for 6 months before filming began at the Shepperton Studios in June of 1967. Reed was a perfectionist who insisted on 50 or 60 takes for some scenes, with the Consider Yourself number taking more than 3 weeks and the Who Will Buy sequence taking 6 weeks to film. The Boy for Sale sequence was shot in the middle of summer despite requiring snow, with exterior shots relying on adequate cloud cover, polystyrene snowballs, salt, crazy foam and mashed potato. The entire film was shot in the studio, with the London sets covering 6 sound stages and a huge studio backlot at the Shepperton Studios. They were adaptable in spite of their sturdy look, as they had to accommodate dance numbers which sometimes required changing sets up to a dozen times. Many of the sets were reused 2 years later for the musical adaptation of Dickens' Scrooge. The remaining exterior sets that were still standing nearly 10 years later were used by Terry Gilliam while shooting Jabberwocky. Mark Lester did not have the vocal range to do his own singing, so it was dubbed by Kathy Green, daughter of Johnny Green, the music supervisor on the film. Lester was not allowed to run around and play with other children on set, as he would become rosy-cheeked and would take 10 or 15 minutes for his complexion to return to normal. Initially budgeted $5 million, costs blew out to $10 million, making this the most expensive musical filmed in the UK at the time. The film earned $40 million worldwide and played for 90 weeks alone at Leicester Square Theatre in London. Jack Wilde's performance earned the 16-year-old actor his only Golden Globe nomination, a BAFTA for Most Promising Newcomer, and an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker called it one of the few film versions of a stage musical that was superior to the original. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 4 stars, calling it a treasure of a movie, and one of those rare films like The Wizard of Oz that appeals in many ways to all sorts of people, naming it the 7th best film of 1968. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, winning Best Picture, Best Director for Carol Reed, Best Set Decoration, Best Musical Score, Best Sound, Best Art Direction, and also winning an Honorary Academy Award for Honor White. It was nominated for 8 BAFTAs. Carol Reed was nominated for a Directors Guild of America Award. It won 2 Golden Globes for Best Picture and Best Actor for Ron Moody, and won a Laurel Award for Best Musical. At the Moscow International Film Festival, it picked up awards for Carol Reed and Rod Moody. The National Board of Review listed it as the 9th best film of the year. It garnered New York Film Critics Circle nominations for Best Film and Best Director. It was preserved by the Academy Film Archive in 1998. It's among the AFI's top 400 greatest American movies and top 180 greatest movie musicals. The British Film Institute ranked Oliver the 77th greatest British film of the 20th century. Time Out magazine, in a poll of 150 actors, directors, writers, producers and critics, rated the 69th best British film ever. Lots of good reasons to watch this film. The sets are incredible, the musical numbers are unforgettable, all the performances are right on the money. It's such a joy to watch from start to finish that you barely notice the 153 minutes of running time. So, what I suggest you do is that you go to our website, find our virtual screenings page, find the link to this particular film, click on it and watch it. As always, see what you think. We'd love you to come back, share your thoughts about the film, and let others know if you'd recommend it for them as well. And then we're back in the not too distant future for our next classic films review. Catch you next time.